We recap the Hornets, what they did over the weekend, and we try to identify them. Who are the Hornets really? That's all today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. If you're watching us on YouTube, not only can you see me and my Twitter handle at Walker Mail, you can also hear me on WFNZ from 12 to 3 with Wes and Walker. You also see Doug Branson, who is back in the saddle. You can also check his Substack out, Every Hornets Boxscore, at everyhornetsboxscore.com. He has joined me once again to talk about this Atlanta Hawks game that saw the Hornets win, Doug. How about 2 in a row? Only the second time this season that the Hornets have had wins in succession. Weird. It goes to show just how tough things have been for this Hornet squad, but they got it done. They win 122-118, and Terry Rozier hit some huge free throws after a foul by Jalen Johnson with just over a second left, and the Hornets are able to come out with the victory. What do you think about the big win, and are you happy that they got the big win this season?
Oh, yeah, I'm happy because it's Atlanta. I feel like it's the closest thing the Hornets have to a rivalry because at least there's some geographic rivalry action. Maybe Miami Heat, you could argue that as well. But anytime you can get one over on Atlanta, and that team seems to be in shambles. Like after the game, Trae Young and Nate McMillan getting into it on the sidelines again. So it's just funny for the Hornets to like play spoiler, but also just get the star player mad at the coach. For the way that game ended. They forced a 5-second call. Like, yeah, Terry Rozier hit the free throws, but they also played good defense. I think really in the second half, like the first half, Walker, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young were absolutely annihilating them. Throw DeAndre Hunter in there too, annihilating them in the mid-range. The strategy was pretty clear for the Hornets defensively. They were going to take Mason Plumlee in that pick and roll and slide him all the way back to the rim and say, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, you're not getting all the way to the rim. You can take as many mid-range shots as you want. In the first half, they were knocking them down. In the second half, I didn't really see much of an adjustment. It looked like Steve Clifford was just going to stick with it. And luckily, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray started missing shots. And then, yeah, the free throws on the foul, Walker. I looked at the last 2-minute report. Apparently it wasn't a foul, according to the last 2-minute report, but who cares? Terry Rozier doing whatever it takes. He's been big. 34 points in this game. Terry Rozier stepping up for the second straight game, because in that second half against Houston, when LaMelo went down, he was big in that second half again. He has been Herculean in his efforts to lift the Hornets up, and you know, maybe that's going to be attractive to a team looking to trade.
Yeah, well, that is baked into the cake of everything that the Hornets are this season, and I want to discuss that. And real quickly with the 2-minute drill, our counterpart Brad Rowland, host of Locked On Hawks, who does a fantastic job, has been doing that for quite a while. He said that the 2-minute report is going to show that Terry Rozier was not fouled, and it won't make anybody feel better. So just a little bit more of the 2-minute report discourse there. It's not going to make anyone feel better, but that's what happened. And you know what? The Hornets will take that victory because they have been it has been to the detriment some of the bad calls at the end of games that have taken victories away from the Hornets this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Hornets have been, the Hornets don't get the benefit of national TV games, and if you do any kind of study of how the referee disparity is laid out, like the national TV games get the best referees. And if you're a team that really is playing for no consequence, you tend to get referees that are a little on the inexperienced side. And Clifford had to be held back at one point by his assistant coaching staff because he was getting into it, not with the lead official, but the second official. He was getting into it, got a technical on that at the end of the first half, like after it was already 0-0 because Trae Young got fouled by PJ Washington. Was a foul to be fair, was a foul.
Oh, yeah.
But then you add one more point there at the first half by Clifford. So he's obviously upset with the referees in that game as well. So, yeah, I'm not taking away anything. Mason Plumlee was great in this one too, Walker. I mean, I had to watch the Atlanta broadcast because of my location here in Nashville. And Mason Plumlee earned the respect on this game alone, earned the respect of Dominique Wilkins on the call. Dominique was giving it up to Mason Plumlee, one Hall of Fame big to another.
The respect level from Dominique, probably the biggest accolade that Mason is going to earn this season, but deserved 25 points, I believe a season high for him in this game. And so, all right, let's talk about who the Hornets are for the rest of this segment, because I don't know. I mean, they are playing the Jazz tonight. So if someone that, might be an authority figure here at Locked On, maybe a play-by-play announcer with a similar name could be listening to try to figure out exactly how they should prep for this game tonight between the Hornets and the Jazz. I'm just throwing it out there. It could be a possibility. You mentioned Terry Rozier. That's where I want to start. If you're to look into the pregame notes, you might start with Terry Rozier, who's been playing a lot better here recently, Doug. 48% in the last month. So you have 10 games played in the month of January. He's shooting 48% from the field. He's shooting 38 from three on 9 attempts per game. So good volume still. You see him averaging 25.5 points per contest. The free throws, he was 5 of 5 in this last one against the Atlanta Hawks that we just talked about, led to a victory. You're right. Terry Rozier, certainly on the trade block, especially with reports that the Hornets are looking to be sellers. There are plenty of other things to look at, but Terry Rozier, the way that they were able to get 2 wins in a row, and this past one against the Hawks, Terry has put them in some decent spots this last month.
It's very true. And I think part of that has been LaMelo Ball's return and its effect on how Terry can play offensively and defensively. And not only LaMelo's return, but Dennis Smith Jr.'s return, because it gives them some options to play Terry with the bench where he doesn't have to guard the best player on the floor. You can slide Dennis Smith Jr. defensively over to that player and take some of the pressure off of Terry to do that. So without LaMelo, will he continue to shoot the basketball well? Because we saw earlier in the season, Terry's shooting numbers drop, and a lot of that we've ascribed, contextually to him having to take on more responsibility. So if LaMelo does not play in this game, I think this is going to be a tough game for Utah to prepare for, honestly, because you don't know whether LaMelo is going to play. And I think this team, it's tough to say who they are, Walker, because they're fundamentally different teams when LaMelo's on the floor and when he's not. And the first half in that Atlanta game, I think, illustrates that. Offensively, their ball movement was awful. They need LaMelo's playmaking abilities to open up things for them. And, Terry Rozier is a player that you really can't take your eye off of. He was 3 of 9 in that first half for 6 points against Atlanta, and he can just flip a switch and just like that go into takeover mode. And sometimes it's great, like against Atlanta. But I know people listening to this show right now, they can remember that Detroit overtime where LaMelo fouls out and Terry goes into hero mode, and it doesn't always work out. And I think maybe that's more indicative of who Atlanta is defensively. So we'll see if Utah can handle that. But yeah, it's tough to say fundamentally who they are because they're so different with and without LaMelo on the floor.
No, 100%. And I do want to talk about the overall philosophy for them in just a moment. Maybe we can talk about it at the beginning of the next segment, especially with LaMelo's injury. Do want to provide some updates there. But I do want to look at a few players' last 10 games. So if you go to the game logs here and just look at the last month of production from some of these guys, Doug, it's pretty night and day from what they had been doing previously. And LaMelo Ball being back has been a big part of that. But we just went over Terry's numbers. They've been very good. You go to PJ Washington's numbers, he's been insane. So he's averaging 16.6 points per game on 53% shooting, 46% from 3 on over 6 attempts per contest there, 4 rebounds, almost 3 assists, 5 helping a lot in what he got here against Atlanta. But 3's about right when you look at some of these other games. So that's kind of interesting for him. The rebounds are always going to be a problem defensively. That's just what PJ struggled with. So PJ's numbers, though, very, very good in the last month. And then Mason Plumlee, who is shooting 76.5%. Yes, 76.5% on 8.5 attempts per game. He's scoring 16.7 points per game. And he's doing that to go along with 12.2 rebounds, 67% from the free throw line, too, if you wanted to add that in there. So those three guys, the last month, have really helped. And yes, what is still not a great record, but 2 wins in a row, only the second time that's happened. Yeah, you'll take it. PJ, Terry, Mason, those have been the guys offensively, at least, Doug, that have really stepped up their efficiency and overall production.
Yeah, there was a play in the fourth quarter against Atlanta where he stole the basketball, then dribbled it out in the open court, made a pass that I don't expect any center in the league to make, and then got an offensive rebound put back in transition. So, he's playing at a high level right now. PJ's playing at a high level, and you've got rumors now that the Hornets are interested in re-signing him. I don't know how much that is smoke, and maybe, some things are obviously happening around this organization in the trade market right now because these quotes don't typically, or these rumors don't typically come out around the Charlotte Hornets. So there's some stuff happening there, but PJ Washington, obviously valuable. He had a grown man three, pull up, very quick decision. That was the go-ahead 3-point shot in that fourth quarter. So everybody's making big plays, and that all comes down to this. This is what you have to know about the Charlotte Hornets. Steve Clifford has this team somehow, look at the record, somehow he has this team still believing they can win. That's why I've said all season, the organization needs to take the keys away from Steve Clifford. He's too good at rallying I don't know how they do it. And you have to give it up to the players too. They're obviously the ones rallying. They're obviously the ones keeping the faith, keeping the belief. It's a lot of players that have a lot of pride on this team, and they're all sticking together. Contrast that with Atlanta. They're falling apart. The Hornets, despite the record, are staying together. I think a lot of credit goes to Steve Clifford for that. And if you're Utah, you can't take your eye off the Hornets. They want to win basketball games still.
All right, we can't talk about the identity of this team without bringing up injuries. So coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We actually had one player outside of LaMelo Ball still miss this game. One player returned, and then, of course, we'll get to some of the details surrounding LaMelo Ball's injuries, plural, not just the ankle. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks works this way. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available, and they offer projections on any sport you watch. That includes the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, college football, men's and women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, NASCAR, Euro basketball, cricket, disc golf. There's so many sports. Just go to PrizePicks and check it out. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. You have safe and fast withdrawals. They're currently operational in 30 states and even Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit 100, PrizePicks gives you 100. If you deposit 50, they give you 50. You get the idea now. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On. You do it at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code Locked On. More Locked On Hornets coming up next.
This is Locked On Hornets.
Mitch Kupchak, will he do the thing that he has not done in season this entire
anything
time?
The thing that he has not done
it
is anything.
Comes back to do something.
Just do one thing.
You need to get a stick from outside and become the meme in person because it always comes back to do something.
Do something.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, before we get started, just let me sip out of my Locked On coffee mug just because people might be listening. Hold on. So
might
tasty.
Be watching. Yeah. David Locke might be watching for sure.
It tastes better in my Locked On official podcast mug. It just tastes better.
You're disgusting. You are disgusting me. You are disgusting me with your company man shilling right now.
I'm just telling you the truth and my factual things right here about how good that coffee tastes. All right, let's talk about the Charlotte Hornets, the identity of this team. It changes so much with LaMelo being on the court, with LaMelo being off of the court, and he has suffered not only an ankle injury, Doug, but he has a wrist injury too. And I think that came to everybody's attention when there was the Twitter clip circulating on social media where the trainer is on the bench messing with LaMelo's wrist, and LaMelo freaks out. It's like a jolt of electricity when he's messing with the wrist. And then you see that actually has kept him out along with the ankle. He's doubtful now against the Jazz. So we don't know if he's going to play tonight. But the last time we checked the designation, he is doubtful. So we'll see what happens with LaMelo. What do you make of this injury with LaMelo? Not only the ankle, but also now the wrist. Another thing that he suffered, right? These are injuries that have been recurring. These are not new injuries. The wrist is what hurt him his rookie season. The ankle, he's injured in, various ways, both ankles this 3 times this year. What do you make of LaMelo with a couple of these injuries that he suffered?
Yeah, he broke his wrist in his rookie season, and it cost him a large portion of that season. And it obviously is concerning. It confirms some concern that I've had, and I've discussed with you and David Walker, seeing LaMelo mess with that wrist. He does it all game. He kind of does this number right here. If you're watching, kind of grabs the wrist and just kind of works it out. He does it on the bench. He does it while he's on the floor. And some people have said to me, well, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's just, just maybe something that he got used to doing. It's not a big deal. Obviously, now I kind of think it's a big deal because his wrist, the same wrist that he broke, is hurting him now. And will he have longer-term effects from some of these multiple ankle injuries? I think it is a big concern, and I think they have to be really careful about bringing him back. And that timeline, he needs to be 100% healthy, because I've seen some comments on the YouTube channel for these videos where we talk about LaMelo's injury saying if he's healthy, he should play, because he's a young player. And while that makes sense to write down on paper, healthy can mean a lot of different things. Healthy is a spectrum, especially in professional sports. Like you can be healthy enough to play, but still, be more likely to have a longer term injury. So I think they have to be really careful here. It's obviously concerning because he is so important to the team to have these injuries piling up so early in his career.
Well, yeah, and the soreness scares me. Like that's the type of thing that scares me. The ankle injury, freak accident with his exchange with PJ Washington out there on the floor, him stepping on the foot of the court or of the fan sitting courtside, that's all freak stuff. And yes, while that might happen throughout the course of a basketball game, the soreness with the wrist that he broke, and that was the one that he hurt his rookie season, and now that is something that is a real problem. That's the thing that scares me more even than the ankles do right now. Because if you go back, you can check out when he came back the last 10 games of that rookie season, his numbers were pretty hurt by his inefficiency, I should say, not ineffectiveness, but his inefficiency with him coming back and just not shooting the ball nearly as well. It hurt his numbers. And while he's still able to win Rookie of the Year, it hurt his numbers. And when you're talking about him now still dealing with it, he said it hadn't been hurting, but now it kind of happened against Houston. Yeah, that's the thing, Doug. Like, I don't know what you do about this if this has been a constant problem. So hopefully it doesn't happen again, but I don't know how confident we can be in that with this thing kind of rearing its head, against Houston. And then who knows how many times after that.
I would not be surprised if this offseason we get news of some kind of procedure, whether it be on the wrist or on the ankle. We get some kind of news that he undergoes. And I think Steph went through this as well. Steph Curry on his ankles, I think, sustained multiple injuries, and then it did something in the offseason that obviously moved him in the right direction. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that as well. Another guy that's been certainly in our injury news universe is Gordon Hayward, and he returned for this game against Atlanta. What did you think about Gordon Hayward coming back in the lineup? Not only coming back in the lineup, Walker, but in the starting lineup alongside Jalen McDaniels. I don't know which one you want to call the shooting guard. I guess Gordon would have played the two there with Terry Rozier, but he opted to go with Gordon in the starting lineup and Jalen. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I love that Jalen McDaniels is still in there, and there wasn't anybody else really to put in unless you really wanted to go with a Dennis Smith Jr., but I like the starting lineup. I have no problem with what you were doing with Gordon. And so in his first game back since the Lakers on January 2nd, so not quite a month, but a good bit, about 3 weeks or so, 9 points for him, but also 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal. contributing in a lot of different areas in the box score. And we've always talked about him being a connector. It's funny, once Rick Bonnell wrote that in an article in the Charlotte Observer, I feel like, including myself, by the way, I've referred to him as the connector a million freaking times, but that's what he is. He just allows you to run your offense to its most effectiveness, if you will, and then allowing Gordon to just move the ball, swing it, just play within the confines, do a few different things, within your offense, get a half court shot if you need him to get to a spot when you're desperately in need of a bucket. And Gordon helps with that 5 assist thing right there. At 9 points, it's actually only the 4th most in the starting lineup. It's right on par with McGowan's, Dennis Smith Jr., Mark Williams, Jalen McDaniels. They all finished with about 8 and 7. But yeah, Gordon helps you. There's no doubt about it. And I know you've always been a fan of his defense when he's been in the lineup.
Well, yeah, and I thought his defense actually wasn't terribly great in this one. I thought DeAndre Hunter was one of the players getting it up over Gordon Hayward multiple times in this game. And I think that's going to be a process for Gordon to kind of get back into the groove a little bit. He plays 25 minutes. I think that's actually probably more than Clifford wanted to play him, but Jalen McDaniels got 3 fouls early in this game, and so they had to really rethink how they were going to shuffle the lineup in and out. But Gordon does play 25 minutes. I think the defense, as he gets back into game shape, he's constantly having to get back into game shape, folks, but once he does, I think he will be able to contribute in multiple different ways. But I have to go back to this idea that, do we want him doing that? Do we want this team? I think, and it goes to the LaMelo injury story as well. Do we want LaMelo's competitiveness to want to win games, take over and get him back onto the floor earlier than maybe the long-termists would want? Because there is this idea that the team is still capable of winning games. Because if you trade a few players and it's evident that this team is not capable of winning games against good teams, then I think it does change the mentality for certain players of thinking like, okay, well, I can come back and contribute, but what does it all mean when I could really instead just get healthy and gear up for next season? So I think they have to think about all of these things, and I really think the organization has to think hard about, they fell back onto Steve Clifford, right? I mean, this was not the coach they initially wanted. They fell back onto Steve Clifford, but what they've ended up with is a guy who knows how to keep a team together through adversity, and that's what's happening right now, and I'm not sure that's great for the long term as the Hornets should be turning their attention to to this next offseason.
Well, and it sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, the whole tank culture thing, they need to lose more games. It feels a little ridiculous to be preaching out there too. But there is a time to worry about that. I mean, you cannot go through this season having had all these problems, find a way to get out and jump over a couple of teams in the standings to only worsen your odds and then not get into the play-in and not get into the playoff. Like, I'm sorry. I know people want to pull for this team. I get it. I mean, it's not like I was here at the beginning of the season. It's not like I was all the way in Tank City where that take was out there. Absolutely. That the Hornets should just bottom out as much as they can. But right now you're looking at them at 13-34. The Pistons have 12 wins. You're looking at the San Antonio Spurs have 14 wins. Houston has 10. So Houston is the favorite to finish with the league's worst record. But the other, like Orlando, is somebody you might worry about. They're at 17-29. That's really the only team I can see bottoming out that could catch the Hornets. But at that point, the Hornets could be the best of a bottom 5 squad, right? And I don't want that. You definitely don't want that.
It's all about timing too, right? I mean, I think you don't want to do this too early where it hurts your ability to develop some of your younger players. But what have we been seeing over the past couple of games, including this game against Atlanta? I saw a great play from Mark Williams. I saw a great play from Bryce McGowens. These guys are now comfortable enough that I think you can turn your attention towards that because you can give those players more time confidently knowing that they're not going to embarrass themselves on the court or actually hamper their development by playing poorly. So I think it is time, and we are getting closer to the trade deadline, and there is more trade scuttlebutt than ever around the Charlotte Hornets. I expect us to be talking a lot about that in the coming days.
Oh yeah, lots of scuttlebutt. We'll be discussing it all here on Locked On Hornets. Let's go to some of the interesting stats surrounding this team coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Get total points added, the stat created, I believe, by NBA Math, Adam Frommel, those guys doing good work. So we'll take a look at some of that surrounding this franchise right now. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. Had an exciting weekend this past go around. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets. That's guaranteed too, by the way. When you place your first $5 bet, just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. And if you want to bet on the Hornets, that's fine. They got the NBA covered for you as well. There's a lot of different teams they got you covered on. Speaking of tonight's game against the Jazz, Doug, real quickly, what do you think the spread is for this game between Utah and Charlotte?
I'm going to go Utah by 6. Utah.
Oh, very close.
Yeah.
Close. It's Utah 7.5 at home against the Hornets. Only a game, only a point and a half off. But if you want to get in on that, Doug, if you think it should be about 6, you can get involved in FanDuel. If everybody else, if the Doug Branson fighters out there, the people that believe in you, think that that is also something that they want to abide by, then they can go to FanDuel and get in on the action. All on the app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans don't miss out. Also, the NBA fans don't either. Place your first $5 bet to go $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One more segment to go. Locked On. Doug, we were talking before the show, the same kind of category that the Hornets and the Jazz were in leading up to the season. And if you look at Utah, they're 24-25. They're the 9 seed in the play-in. What's weird about that is they're actually worse than they were at the beginning of the season when they were the darlings of the NBA. They did hold on to the 1 spot. I think it was something like 15 games in. I think it had gotten that deep into the year with Utah still holding on to that 1 seed. Lauri Markkanen turning into an all-star. Crazy. By the way, just to add insult to injury, Lauri Markkanen was one of the few free agents that the Hornets were interested in 2 off seasons ago, and then it just never materialized, and so now he goes to Utah.
Surprise.
He's skipping in a field full of sunflowers and nice-looking flowers all over the place. And with Charlotte, here we are, not in the play-in, but it's actually good because Utah could be sellers as well with some of the players that they have, not a Lauri Markkanen, not some of the, like, not a Walker Kessler, right? But with some of the other older players that might keep them from finishing too low in the standings and therefore having a better draft pick. Where the Hornets, I mean, the Hornets could have been in the same situation, and the Hornets, because of the pressure they feel to win with LaMelo, then and maybe Miles on that team at that point as well, you wonder if it would have gone a different direction for the Charlotte Hornets this season. Just interesting trajectories for both of these franchises.
Yeah, well, the Jazz shuffled the deck, and they expected that house of cards to fall, and instead they ended up with a straight flush at the beginning of the season. Now, the subsequent hands, you like that?
Coming in hot. I love it.
Now, the subsequent hands, they've fallen back a little bit, but the Hornets had their deck shuffled for them by the Miles Bridges situation. That sort of dominoed into several things that happened this offseason, and here's where they find themselves. But the injuries, I think, really, Walker, have saved the Hornets from themselves, because I honestly believe that had they stayed healthy, completely healthy, not any major injuries to rotation players, which they had many this season, but if they had stayed completely healthy, I think they would be in the exact same position that the Utah Jazz are in, sort of right there around the 500 mark. And this team and the organization would not have been sellers. They would have either been buyers or they would have been stand patters, knowing cynically that they were most likely going to bring back Miles Bridges and upgrade that position in the future. So it's 2 different organizations with fundamental. One fundamentally understands, Utah fundamentally understands what it takes to get into championship contention, and they know they're not there. And the Hornets, I think, fundamentally misunderstand that. They misunderstand what exactly it takes to get playoff success. And to be fair, they haven't had playoff success in decades.
Correct.
So So I think the injuries have saved them from themselves, because now they're forced to be sellers almost.
Well, and even in the Eastern Conference, right? Even if you get to some kind of Orlando, Washington territory with 17 and 20 wins, and you're not just one win less or one win below 500, then you could see the Hornets trying to get into the play-in from that, right? Because Chicago is 21 and 24. They are the last team in the play-in. And so even just, I mean, it's crazy. A few more wins right now, right? Like maybe 3 or 4, not even a handful of wins. You could see the Hornets try to, all right, well, maybe we could get to the play-in. So I think you're right about all of that. I know you had some interesting stats you wanted to look at when it comes to total points added. What did you want to discuss here from NBA Math, Doug?
Well, shout out to the Charlotte Hornets Reddit that put this on their page. I was scrolling, and found the TPA stats. So I wanted to confirm them. Went to now it's a new website, sportsmathnetwork.com, that gives me these stats. So total points added, it's like all stats that try to, give you some indication of sort of a full picture of what someone does offensively or defensively. It has its flaws, but I think generally the NBA math community has gathered around TPA as at least a good starting point indicator if someone is doing something positive or negative for you on the offensive or defensive end. So there's TPA offensive points added and TPA defensive points saved. And there are 2 players, Walker, for the Charlotte Hornets that have above average or positive TPAs. Would you like to guess who those 2 players are?
Is it hilarious that the first guy that comes up in my mind, I mean, just the first name that flashes, is Mason Plumlee. It's the very first one that I would guess. Is that correct?
We'll see. Go ahead and guess the second player, and then I'll reveal.
Okay. So the second guy, as far as all season goes, Dennis Smith Jr. offensively has been rough. I thought he would have been there had he continued his beginning season production. I'm going to go Jalen. I think Jalen McDaniels has been somewhat consistent. I don't think LaMelo Ball has played enough games. I'm just kind of operating under him having not done that.
Oh well, you should have gone with LaMelo Ball, because it is LaMelo Ball. Mason Plumlee and LaMelo Ball, the correct answer. The only 2 players, Mark Williams hovering around the line, but the only 2 players are Mason Plumlee and LaMelo Ball. Jalen, so if you look on the left, if you're watching on YouTube, on the left side of the screen shows you the offensive and defensive points added. And Jalen McDaniels is a positive defensive player, but offensively, we know that shooting has gone in and out. So he is pretty rough offensively in terms of the amount of points added for Jalen McDaniels. But yeah, I mean, some wild numbers here. Mason Plumlee, the only one that has a positive offensive and defensive TPA. LaMelo's offense has been so good that it counters the defensive issues that he had, and I think that matches the eye test. Look at the defensive points saved for Terry Rozier, below -60. Like that's cratering defensively.
Terry is on an island by himself, and it is not one anyone wants to visit.
Well, he's on an island by himself.
Makes total sense. I didn't know if there was some kind of filter with the amount of games played. So LaMelo would absolutely be the other guy with offensively just chucking it this season. The second most amount of 3-point field goals taken, and also hitting at a pretty good percentage. So LaMelo, Mason, the fact that Mason is in the only quadrant that shows you being positive on both ends it's crazy. I mean, I would never have guessed it. So not at the beginning of the season that he would be that guy.
The reason Terry Rozier is on an island, Walker, is because he let his guy blow by him. I mean, that's how you end up by yourself with the other. Now, to be fair to Terry, again, I think without LaMelo and DSJ, he has had to take on defensive responsibilities that he's just not up for. That's just a reality. He came into this season wanting to do more defensively. He had to do a lot more, and he failed to do so. But more importantly, because of LaMelo's absence, I think his shooting numbers cratered. And so that's what you're seeing here, is that his offense should be around LaMelo's. And that, I think if we looked at last season, you'd see LaMelo and Terry both around the same TPA offensively, if I had to guess. And so that's where Terry's issues come in, is that his offense, his 3-point shooting, has not been able to counteract how he hurts you defensively. But yeah, Mason's incredible. Again, if I would be screenshotting this if I'm Mitch Kupchak and emailing it out to all of the general managers saying, hey, Mason is a guy that, is not going to obviously not going to dominate the interior defensively, but knows what to do in the pick and roll. He could be a great backup big on a playoff team. I think he's got to be on the phone.
All right. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow to recap Hornets Jazz.